Before we begin, please subscribe and like this channel so you never miss a new true story. Grandpa, she hurts mommy when you go away. Those were the words my 4-year-old grandson whispered to me 3 days before my wedding, tugging on my sleeve while everyone else in the room was laughing and toasting my happiness. My name is Marcus Whitfield. I'm 63 years old, and for 35 years I built a construction and real estate business in Charlotte, North Carolina, from nothing but a pickup truck and a promise to my late wife, Diane, that I'd give our family a good life. Diane passed 6 years ago from cancer, and I grieved her the way you grieve the only woman who ever really knew you. My son, Terence, was 38, married to a woman named Priya, and they had my only grandson, little Elijah, who was the reason I still smiled some mornings. After Diane died, I stayed close to Terence and his family. I helped with Elijah's school tuition. I co-signed on their house when Terence's business hit a rough patch, and I never once made them feel like they owed me anything for it. That's not how I raised my son to think, and it's not how I wanted to live either. Love, to me, was never a ledger. 2 years ago, I met Renata at a charity gala for the local children's hospital, one my company had helped rebuild after a fire. She was warm, sharp, funny, a retired schoolteacher with her own grown children in Atlanta. We took our time. I wasn't a man in a hurry to replace what I'd lost, and she understood that. By last spring, I'd proposed, and the wedding was set for a Saturday in October at a small vineyard outside the city. Terence seemed happy for me, at least on the surface. Priya was polite in that careful, performative way some people are when they're hiding something underneath. I noticed things. The way a man notices things when he's spent a lifetime reading contracts and reading people. Elijah had grown quieter around his mother. He flinched sometimes when she raised her voice, even just a little. Terence looked tired in a way that wasn't about work, but I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere in my son's marriage, that every couple has their hard seasons, and I stayed quiet, the way I always have when trouble comes. I watch. I wait. I don't react out of emotion, because emotion clouds judgment, and judgment is the one thing I've always trusted to see me through. Then came that night, 3 days before my wedding, at a small family dinner at my house. Elijah crawled into my lap after dessert, and while the adults were distracted with wine and wedding talk, he looked up at me with those big brown eyes and said it plain, the way only a child can say something plain. Grandpa, she hurts mommy when you go away. I asked him gently what he meant. He said Priya's boyfriend came to the house sometimes when Daddy worked late, and that mommy cried after he left, and that Elijah wasn't supposed to tell. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't confront anyone that night. I simply held my grandson a little tighter, kissed his forehead, and told him he was safe, and he'd done nothing wrong by telling me. Inside, something in me went still and cold and clear, the way it does right before I make the biggest decisions of my life. I spent the next 2 days doing what I do best, gathering facts before I ever opened my mouth. I hired a private investigator I'd used years ago for a business dispute, a quiet, thorough woman named Carol who didn't waste time or words. What she found in 48 hours confirmed what my grandson's small voice had already told me. Priya had been seeing a man named Dale for nearly a year, someone she'd met at her gym. Terence had no idea. And there was something else Carol found, something that turned my blood colder than the affair itself. Priya had been quietly moving money out of the joint account Terence and I had set up for Elijah's education, funneling small amounts over months into a separate account under her maiden name. I didn't call Terence in a rage. I didn't storm into his house. I sat with the truth for one more day, the way I've always sat with hard truths before acting on them, because a man who reacts in anger makes mistakes. And I don't make mistakes I can't undo. The night before my wedding, I asked Terence to come by my house alone. Told him I wanted a quiet moment with my son before I started this new chapter. When he arrived, I didn't dress it up. I put Carol's file on the table between us, and I told him what Elijah had said, what I'd found, and what it meant. I watched my son's face go through something I hope I never have to watch again. The particular collapse of a man realizing the ground he's been standing on was never solid. He wanted to go to the house right then, and I understood that instinct. But I asked him to let me handle the money matter my way, quietly and legally, while he handled his marriage the way only he could. I called my attorney that same night. By morning, before my own wedding, I had already had the education account frozen and restructured so that only Terence and Elijah's school could access it directly, with documentation of every withdrawal Priya had made, ready for whatever came next, whether that was a conversation or a courtroom. My wedding day came, and I married Renata in front of the people who mattered, under string lights and an October sky. And it was beautiful, and it was mine. And I refused to let anyone's betrayal steal that joy from me. Terence stood as my best man, his eyes red but his back straight. And Elijah threw flower petals down the aisle like he didn't have a single worry in the world, because that's exactly how a child should feel. Priya didn't come to the wedding. She told Terence she had a headache, which turned out to be the truth wearing a very thin disguise, since Carol's last report placed her at Dale's apartment that same afternoon. 2 weeks later, the real confrontation happened, not with shouting, but with paperwork spread across Terence's kitchen table, Priya sitting across from her own reflection in what she'd built. Terence laid out the affair. He laid out the missing money. Priya tried what people like her always try first, which is denial. And when denial failed, she tried to make it about me, said I'd overstepped, said I had no right to investigate her. I let Terence answer that one, because it wasn't my marriage to defend. But I did say one thing before I left them to it. I told her that a grandfather who ignores his grandson's fear isn't protecting anyone's privacy, he's just protecting his own comfort. And I wasn't willing to do that anymore. The divorce process was swift, because the evidence was clean, and Priya knew it. She didn't fight for custody the way she might have, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of exhaustion, maybe because some small part of her knew Elijah was safer and happier with his father. Terence kept the house. The education fund stayed protected, untouched, exactly where it belonged. Priya moved into an apartment across town, and the last I heard, things with Dale hadn't worked out either, which surprised no one who'd paid attention. I never once raised my voice through any of it. I never posted about it, never gossiped about it at family gatherings, never made Priya into a villain in front of Elijah. Because children carry the weight of what adults say about each other longer than we realize. I simply made sure the people I loved were protected, and I let the truth do the rest of the work, the way truth always does when you give it room to breathe. These days, Elijah spends weekends at my house with Renata and me. He still climbs into my lap sometimes, though he's getting too big for it. And he laughs easy now, the kind of laugh that comes from a child who finally feels safe again. Terence has started dating someone new, slowly, carefully, a nurse named Angela, who treats Elijah like he hung the moon. And every October, on my wedding anniversary, I think about how a 4-year-old boy's whispered warning did more to protect my family than any contract I ever signed in 35 years of business. I built my life on patience, on watching quietly before I ever moved. And that patience never failed me once. Not that night. Not since.